Welcome to the Business Greater Than You podcast, where we dive deep into the stories of men and women who have successfully transcended the frazzled solopreneur life and built productive teams with better lifestyle and income.
I'm Nelson Bars, the founder and owner of Utah Independent Mortgage Corp.
And I'm Liz Sears, founder and co-owner of My Utah Agents.
We're excited for you to listen, interact, and grow with us. So please share your comments below and let's get started.
All right, Burke Larsen with Lifetime Family Wellness. We are so excited to have you on our show today.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
So perfect. Why don't you start by telling us just a little bit about you and what you do and all of that.
Sure. So I'm Dr. Burke Larsen. My clinic's name is Lifetime Family Wellness. We're here in South Ogden. And what do? We do chiropractic.
And acupuncture. That was freaky the first time you did that. Yeah. I'm like, seriously, you're sticking needles in me?
Acupuncture. We do a little bit of laser, a little nutrition, some of those types of things. Mm-hmm. Our biggest focus is spinal correction as much as that's possible, meaning we work with the natural curvatures of the spine and try to get those restored as much as possible to remove nerve pressure and issues with the spine. We work with a lot of kids, moms, pregnancy as well.
Even babies. I've seen that.
Even babies. So we do a lot of pediatric care, and so that's what we do. It's amazing.
Awesome.
Nice.
Yeah. We wanted to have you on because we both really admire your business. We've both been patients of yours, but we've seen, I think for the first time I've seen how a successful chiropractic clinic can run, right? I was shocked the first time I went into your clinic and just saw how many patients were going through, how many people were on your team, how synchronized your team was.
So efficient.
They all knew my name, right? And I know that doesn't happen by accident. So we wanted to
for sure
find out how you run your team, right? This podcast is all about building a team and business greater than you, right? It's doing more than you could do all by yourself and the joy of doing that. So can you talk to us just a little bit about how you started your business? And I know you this is not your first clinic, right? You've had one before, and how you landed on the business model that you run now?
So and that's probably a good starting point and a good story. So I started my first practice in 2010 in central Utah, and I think that's where we learned how to do things the wrong way.
That's often how people start.
It was successful eventually.
Yeah.
And really, you leave chiropractic school, you're a good practitioner, but you're not necessarily a good business person.
Kind of like E-Myth.
Yeah, very much. It's like exactly like E-Myth. You don't, you like baking pies, but that's about all you know.
Yep.
So in the travels in the first 2 to 3 years, we did build a practice. It was very much grassroots built and eventually was fairly healthy. But it was along that way that I stumbled upon a coaching group by the name of TLC for super teams. That's the group that I'm with. And it was through their technologies, and I call them technologies, but they're coaching, that we really settled on a business model that is, one, sustainable and two, efficient, and then put that in place. And what I do like about them is it is all about building a team. Mm-hmm. That's what it's focused on. Its focus is on 4 pillars, and one of those pillars is a team-driven practice. And so it's where it is very much, how have you built your team? What does each team member do? How do those team members then overlap in other areas and execute the process as efficiently as possible? And so it was taking that, as we implemented that, our practice grew to a point where we realized that we did not want to be in central Utah anymore for several reasons, and decided to sell it off and start over up here in Ogden. So.
Awesome.
That sounds scary.
It was scary.
Starting over.
Sure. It's always scary.
So this coaching program, this is for chiropractors, right? Specifically
built by and for chiropractors. I think the models would work in any situation. Yeah. But that's what they focused on the most. We've had other people in there, dentists and veterinarians and things like that. But for the most part, it's in clinical practicing chiropractors.
So that's interesting. You say, you finish chiropractic school, you have no training really on business.
I mean, not really.
A lot like realtors and mortgage.
Right.
Like you learn how to pass the test, you learn how to stay out of jail, but that's
or,
about all that
or
you
doctors learn. Or dentists or it doesn't matter what your field is, you get the skills to actually do the work, but It's a whole different story to try to run a business.
Yeah, and the care part of that, or, the actual doing of mortgages or selling of homes, it's probably only about a third of what I feel like I needed to know to be successful in practice.
Yeah.
So tell me about the difference in the structure that you had with your first company that you built, and then the team structure with, what you have now.
Well, I think initially the structure we had honestly was, let's just go do it. And we threw stuff together as we grew, and things became blatantly obvious as problems, and you go, okay, so how do we solve this problem? Versus the new structure is, okay, here are the things that each person should be doing. And as you grow from, let's say, 1 employee to 2 to 3 to 4, how are you going to then split those responsibilities out and augment them so they become a lot more efficient? So, the first clinic for the very first 3 or 4 years looked very hodgepodgey. Now we have a very specific role. And one of the things that we always are looking at is, if we go to this next level, where's our capacity bottlenecks the most, whether that's team, whether that's processes, or whatever it is, and how do we then look forward down the road to that, so when it does come, it's done. It's that if you build it, they will come kind of a thing.
Yeah.
So I'm curious.
Clinic of dreams.
So maybe fast forward to the present day.
Sure.
How big is your clinic? How many employees do you have? What does your team look like?
So we have 3 full-time employees, myself, and then my wife, Mandy, acts as kind of a CEO, CFO, in the background of all of that. So that's...
Okay. So 3 full-time employees and yourself, and then your wife does background stuff.
And mostly just managing procedures and things in the background and making sure billing and all that happens.
So can you walk us through how your team works? What do those 3 employees do? I assume this is the business model you were learning from TLC and implementing. Now you're coaching for them, right?
I coach for them.
Yeah.
Yep.
So how long have you been doing their program?
Their program, I've been there for 8, almost 9 years.
Okay.
And then coaching in the last year, year and a half.
I'm surprised that there's only 3 people there, because it feels like, I guess the rest of the people there are all your patients, because when I go in your office,
it's
busy. Buzzing, right?
Yeah.
There's just so much going on.
Yeah.
So tell us how they do it and how you do it.
So basically there's 3 major positions.
Okay.
So you've got a front desk chiropractic assistant, a financial chiropractic assistant, and a tech assistant. And so each one of those has specific responsibilities as to how and when they engage with the patient.
Okay.
So the person who's answering the phone and your initial contact person, we call that the front desk. So she or he is there to receive patients. That person deals with all the scheduling, all the phone calls, all the new patient phone calls, and those types of things.
Right.
So that's the face of the practice, if you put it that way, is that person.
Okay.
That's the first point of contact. Then the second person is, if I walk through the first day or second day of a patient first coming into the office, the second person they'll actually come in contact with is actually the tech CA, the person who will be doing the most hands-on work outside of me with the patient. So that tech person is there to do whatever needs to happen in the clinic, which is as far as making sure patient flow is good, making sure everyone's where they need to be when they need to be to get adjusted, or other therapies, whether, like you mentioned, acupuncture, laser, nutrition, or whatever it is, that they're in those places at the right time. And then the next person is the financial CA. The financial CA does everything with finances. So where the person is with a care plan, what their finances look like as far as what their payments are versus copay, if they've used the visits, if they haven't used visits, what the insurance is being billed, and all that kind of thing. So those are your 3 basic people, and then you have eventually we'll add in what's called a PRCA, which is a promotions and marketing person, who will mostly do things outside of the clinic for promotion. And that's the next person we hope to add.
So the one that intrigues me the most is the tech CA.
Okay.
I think most of us are familiar with the front desk person, and It sounds
finance
that's very similar, right? And a finance person, but that tech CA, I've noticed they're in the room with you when you're doing adjustments.
Yep.
They're taking notes. You're kind of chirping out notes as you work, and you're saying all kind of funky words that nobody understands, right?
Right.
Lumbar 42, and
Correct.
they know what you mean, right?
Sure.
Tell us more about that. What kind of person is that? What kind of training do they have, and do you give them? Or
Sure. So the tech CA really knows everything that I technically don't have to do by law. So in the state of Utah, all I technically have to do is adjust people and set needles and that kind of a thing. So if we're doing any other types of therapies, laser, spinal corrective chair, x-rays, and even a lot of the exam, that can be potentially done depending on the state and what the laws look like. They can do all that information. So definitely she acts as a scribe. So notes and things like that are done in real time as much as possible. So each account, that every time someone comes in, that's being recorded and put in the note there.
awesome.
Perfect.
That's what that person does.
So I know when we were chatting earlier, you were talking about how for the first half hour, is it every morning and afternoon, or how do you set up your day? You were talking about that.
So our whole week is set up in 7 sessions.
Okay.
So what I mean by that is 7 4-hour sessions. There's a Monday morning and afternoon session, a Tuesday afternoon session, Wednesday, Thursday morning and afternoon session. So those 7 sessions, we start a half hour early, and we do something called press. And so what press means is we go over the list of people coming in that session and look at presses, anything policies, education, spinal workshops, and referrals.
Okay.
So we go through and look at those people and say, is there any of this we need to take care of with these people? So one of the things we focus on is education as much as we can. So whether that's handing out or talking about different research, different things like that, things people can do to be more healthy as they go through their journey. And so that first half hour, we're there putting together that session. So we do 1 half hour before we start in the morning and a half hour as we come back from lunch, getting ready for those people coming. So we're looking over all of them, any specific or needs that need to be taken care of or things that need to be communicated to those people.
I love that. I know when I've walked in, it's just they know I'm coming, right? They know my name. Hey, Nelson, how are you? And I'm sure that's part of your press meeting, right? You're going over who's coming in and making sure everybody remembers who they are and welcomes them as a patient and a part of your family, right? Just
for sure. And that's the whole feel is we want to be different in the sense that we want people to feel like we're family.
Yeah.
And I think we mostly succeed at that.
Yeah.
I've heard that sometimes in your half-hour meeting, you'll have like Nerf gun wars and
things
like that. So what are some of the things you do to kind of build the culture amongst your team?
Sure. So the last, we call it a huddle. So the last 10 minutes before we open, we do something to break up the monotony. There's on your way to work, stuff happens. As you leave your house, there's different stressors. As you get back from lunch, there's different things going on. And we can all probably agree that that's not always the state of mind you want to be starting serving people with.
Yeah.
So we always do something fun before we
just
begin.
to shake off the baggage that you've got there.
So we call it huddles. We have a whole huddle kit, and we'll do Nerf gun fights. We'll play different 5-minute games, Pictionary, whatever.
Did you ever do minute to win it ones then?
Minute to win it type. We've played a lot of those different things. There's a ton. If you go to the store, any game can be made into a 5 or 10 minute game. I mean, just
That's
about.
True.
You get a bunch of cards and do trivia or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So
one of the things I think is unique about, well, it's not unique. It's good to have you here because your business is like so many others where it's not like you can scale so much that you're not involved in the client interaction. There's laws. You're the one who has the licensing and the education to be a chiropractor.
correct.
So, I could think of photographers or architects or anybody who has that.
Right.
You almost get capped out, appraisers, right?
Sure.
They can be capped out on how big they can grow.
Sure.
Because it's just how many things can they do in a day, or do they even want to do? And growth might even scare them, right? It's like, I don't even want to grow. I can't do more than this, right?
Yeah.
So how has that helped you to scale, and how would you scale beyond where you're at right now within that business model, if you wanted to keep growing, do you want to keep growing first of all?
For sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how does that work in your business model?
Well, so going back, and this is one of the things we talk to specifically about with other chiropractors as they join in and say, okay, where are you at? How many people do you see a week? How many people do you want to see a week? What does that look like? Because we know at certain numbers, you're going to have to add employees. And those employees are going to have to take on some of that responsibility as you scale that up. There is a point, though, when physically, since I'm the one doing the adjusting, I can't adjust any more people. I mean, it just doesn't make sense. And the only way to scale that more is to hire another doctor.
Okay.
And so that's our next step right now.
That's your next hire you're looking at as a doctor?
Well,
possibly?
that we just found one of our amazing employees is leaving.
Oh.
no.
Moving to
That'll happen
Oregon.
sometimes.
No, excuse me, not Oregon. Oklahoma.
That makes me sad.
It does make me sad too. So, yes, that will be our next big move. We've got a few things to do before that happens, but that's the next thing on the horizon to say, okay, how does that look and what will that doctor do? Will that doctor eventually need employees? So we're not burdening the employees so much that they're like, I can't handle doing all of this. So we will be, scaling up to that. And those are numbers, for the most part, we know, as a doctor gets to a certain place, okay, you really do need another employee. And we try to get them to hire that new employee before the growth is there. Because if you don't, once the growth is already there, and then try to train that person in that level, it's chaotic.
Absolutely.
That is
it's
huge
hard
for our listeners because a lot of them find themselves in that situation that they don't want to hire somebody until they have enough business to justify it.
I get it.
But if you wait too long, you've got both burdens.
It's lots of burdens, and maybe to the point where you'll subconsciously start to sabotage yourself in that growth.
I think anybody who's been in the business long enough has gone through a self-sabotage point because you're like, I cannot be this busy for this long. And so you'll start to pull back in the ways that cause you to have less business.
Right.
But what is more beneficial is just to know it's coming, work purposely towards that, and then, like you said, hire ahead of the
curve.
influx of business.
That's right.
Perfect.
So you have this employee who's leaving,
Yep.
right? So what's it going to look like from here to replace that employee? How do you recruit? How do you find good people? Do you hire people with no experience? Do you prefer experience?
I actually prefer not experience, especially in my field. Only because what we do is fairly unique. I wouldn't say we're the only people that do it. I mean, a lot of chiropractors do this kind of a model, but it is unique enough that having someone who has experience already in the chiropractic world
Might fight against your system.
can fight against the system for themselves. Not necessarily for me, but for themselves. I don't mind some experience. So like we hired a vet tech, and that was amazing because she already understood caring for people, but the model was different enough that it didn't cause too much conflict.
Nice.
So yeah, I do like experience, but what we do, the first thing we do is we send out a please help letter. We give that to specific patients or people in the community that are connected network-wise. So I'm not looking to hire patients, and I do state that. I'm not looking to hire within the practice. I've done that. That's a mistake. Or can be a mistake. It can work out well, but usually doesn't. That's my experience anyway. So we'll hand that letter out for 2 to 3 weeks. And then if anyone has anybody that they think would be a good fit, then we put an ad out on Indeed or those several different types of places, and we have different ways to limit that. So it's really easy to go into Indeed and just click apply, and they don't even really look at your ad or what you're looking
They're
for.
just
So
applying to apply.
yeah, so we have a whole thing that they have to go through before I even look at it.
What are some of those steps?
So the first step is they have to take a DISC assessment, and they have to then save that DISC assessment, and they have to save it as a PDF and then email it to me at the clinic. And if they don't do that email, I don't even look at the application.
Yeah.
Yeah, because if they can't follow simple technical,
That's the biggest part.
Yeah.
And you'd be surprised of the 200 or so we get every time. There might be 50 at the most that will do it the way they're supposed to. And then we look at that DISC assessment, and there's certain people we look for in that DISC assessment, and for each position. So we look at that, and then we hold a group interview. And so we interview people as a group first. Anyone we liked in the group interview, we then will bring back for a kind of a working interview and then hire from there.
Nice.
Okay, so I'm
process.
curious about the working interview.
Mm-hmm.
What does that look like, and what do you get from it?
What I'm really looking for, because even when we hire you for the first 2 weeks, you don't get to touch or do anything. You just get to walk around and watch what everybody does for those first 2 weeks while you practice some of the incoming information I want you to understand. And so that practice, that working interview is really, how are they meshing with the other team? Mm-hmm. How are they, talking and or associating with the practice members and patients, and what does that look like? Because I can teach procedure. Anyone can do procedure. I cannot teach personality. And so
it's a lot harder.
It's a lot harder to teach personality. And so if it's just not a personality match, then then we kind of as a team vote.
I was going to say, do you let the team members have a say?
For the most part.
That's great.
Yeah. I think they have to.
In our office, everybody knows they have the veto option. If we bring someone in we do a working interview as well.
Yeah.
A lot of it is just, I want them to get a feel too as the applicant.
Sure.
Where's their desk going to be? What's it going to be like? Excuse me. And then once they leave, we just talk about them, right?
Yeah.
And then people are like, no, please don't hire that person. And that's a good sign, right?
It is. And that's what that whole working interview's for, is that time to just see who they are. I mean, because what do you really know, even in a group interview or even a personal interview? What do you really know?
Have you ever made a bad hire?
Sure.
That you went through that whole process? How'd you handle that? How did you know it was a bad hire? How long did it take you, and how did you resolve it?
You act like there's only been one.
Yeah, just the one.
And there's just that one time.
What it comes down to is one of two things.
Okay.
I tell my employees all the time, I will strive with you as long as you're striving with me.
Oh, I like that saying.
So as long as we want to be together and they're willing, and I see that things are changing. I understand that certain types of things just people don't get very fast. And again, that's procedural, and we're working on it, and I'm seeing that things are improving. Fine. But one of the things we always say, and this is that there's only two reasons people don't do something. One, you didn't train them. Two, they don't care.
Yeah.
And so the question is, did you train them? And so in the training process of every step in the clinic is, I show them, they show me live, and then they show me they can do it without me being there. Nice. And if they've done all that and then no longer do the step, then they don't care.
Yep.
Does that make sense? So in each level of what they're doing, my job is to train them, not abdicate it, because you can easily abdicate anything. Right. Oh yeah, you're now the scheduler.
Yeah.
And if they fail at that because you didn't tell them, well, then that's on you.
Yep, that makes sense.
And so what we would go through is we go through a 90-day, a 6-month, a year type interview as we go through that, or anniversary, if you want to call it that, and look at those periods of time that first year and really scrutinize. And I tell my people, you've got 6 months to screw up as much as possible. Make every mistake you can, because I am then, expecting a level of perfection, right? I mean, everyone makes mistakes, and I'll give you grace again, as long as you're striving to be there. We all forget stuff.
Yeah.
But that's how,
I
basically
love it.
Go, hey, this just isn't a fit, and sometimes it comes as a surprise, although I don't know how, because we have weekly meetings, and I'm saying, let's do this, and over time, it's just not being done. It's just not a fit.
I love that philosophy, though, of training versus abdicating. Yeah. I'm going to remember that, because I find myself abdicating often, right?
It's super
so much
easy
easier.
to do. Yeah.
And you got a smart person on your team, they'll figure it out.
And they might.
But at the same time, they're probably going to figure it out a different way than what I figured it out and the way I would like it done. And then they have to guess if they did it right. And
if they guess wrong one time, it makes them gun shy to guess again.
Yeah.
So they guess wrong.
Yeah. So. Very cool.
Yep.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, it sounds like a really cool business you got going, and it's just impressive. And I can't imagine. So a question I have, you're coaching other chiropractors, right? Do you see characteristics that you notice in some of these students that are good or bad? Like, what's going to indicate to you who's going to make it or not in their practice?
I think anyone.
That's a good question, Nelson.
Yeah. So attributes. Here's what I tell people, and this is the biggest attribute is, or the biggest thing I think that people need to get over is perfectionism. So people, I will eventually do this thing when I'm perfect at it, whatever that thing is. And so the attribute that I feel makes people successful is they're willing to show up no matter what.
Even if they know they're not going to get it right.
Even if they didn't get it right,
they
or,
can.
My job is I'm called an accountability coach. So I keep people accountable to a specific process that they're working on throughout the coaching clinic, the coaching firm. So we have different action steps that they're supposed to be taking, that they're supposed to be doing through a certain period of time. And even the ones who may not be taking that to 100% completion, but are trying, they're trying to implement, they're trying to improve their processes. We always see growth. There's always a huge amount of growth. It's the people who don't show up, aren't willing to put themselves out there, be a little bit vulnerable to the process.
Perpetually preparing.
Yeah, they're always preparing. That's the biggest thing I notice. So even if you just show up to different seminars, to the phone calls, even if you're like, hey, I did nothing you told me to do last time, but I'm here to tell you I did nothing last time. That's something, right? That person's reaching out for communication, help, and growth.
Yeah. Wow. Well, good. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. So
I'm looking at Liz to see if she has another question.
Do you have any virtual assistants right now? I know at one point we were talking about that.
I do not. I don't know how I would have a virtual assistant for the clinic itself. There's too much hands-on paper trailing and things that have to be done physically. And so I thought about having a virtual assistant just for myself and scheduling and doing some of those things. And that may or may not still be paramount. I haven't ever done it, but so currently no.
But it is something that you've thought about.
Yeah.
And so what are some of the pieces that if you were to delegate, what would those be? So you said scheduling. What else?
So I'd love to delegate someone, to someone my schedule. Just tell me to show up at this point.
Yeah.
I've done that. It's great.
Yeah. It is awesome.
I think it needs to, it's getting to the point where it needs to be done. So delegating, at this point, I think pretty much things are pretty, other than personal life stuff.
What about your email? Have you delegated that?
No, that's the next thing. That's the thing we were talking about at one point.
Yeah.
Is because it is a nightmare.
I
won't show you the 10,000 unread emails.
Unfortunately, he's not exaggerating. I know this. I have an assistant, and
those aren't clinical emails.
Ones that don't really matter. But I do have an assistant. That is all she does for me, is just go through my emails. And I found that was an absolute game changer for me, because she left for a period of time and then came back, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize how much of a lifesaver. So she takes my emails and categorizes it into action needed, if there's something I need to do, review, if it's something that I need to know about but I don't need to do, and then if it's all small stuff, if it shows up in my action needed and it's something she could do, I train her on how to do it, and then she takes care of that. So
that's a good
brilliant.
Maybe we need to hook you up with something for that.
And I think you did start to, and then I just have dropped the ball. And I don't know if it's the same place you're using, but
it's not. But that would work too.
Well, I would like to know more about it, because it's
Okay.
I did miss it.
What you just described is almost exactly how we do my email in my office too. Yeah. On my team, I have two different assistants who watch my email account, and they both do the same thing, right? They grab them when they come in, they flag them for me to do something. Yeah. But they know, try not to flag them for me, because I suck at getting to them, right? Right. So they'll often reply as me, right? If someone's just like, hey, are we still closing tomorrow? They can walk over and ask the processor, are we still closing tomorrow? Yes. Yeah. Come back and say, you bet. And it looks like I'm the one who sent the email. Yep. Right?
For sure. Exactly. And that's, so in the clinic we have that.
Okay.
So anything
but in
clinical.
Your personal, you don't.
This is my personal side of things.
That's next level.
Where there's not, the only thing that goes through there personally would be some of my coaching stuff. And most of it, to be honest, is just junk mail I need to just not deal with.
Yeah.
But anyway.
But one day.
But I do need to get that contact from you.
So I'm curious about, you mentioned the first go around and all the things you learned not to do.
Mm-hmm.
Can you give us some specifics of, back when you were new and young and starting out,
Sure.
what you did wrong?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing was how do you, so the biggest thing was saying, okay, so I see all this need in a person.
Mm-hmm.
They obviously see that need too, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so if you start caring for them, they will naturally understand that continuing care to get to a certain point will happen naturally. And that's not how people work.
You're assuming they would just keep coming.
You're assuming that people would understand that there's a benefit and keep coming.
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't communicate the goal, communicate the problem, communicate the solution and what that looks like, and that is a longer term process, then at some point you're a Band-Aid. Okay, so you're adjusting someone just when they're in pain.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that brings us all back to what's going on with pain physiologically, and realizing if you're only treating pain, you're really degrading the process in the body even more. So the person's technically getting worse through a time period and not better if you're only going in and putting a Band-Aid on it at times. And that's just physiology. But going back and communicating that to somebody and how that works and why that needs to happen, that was the biggest game changer.
And that looks more like, I think I can see what that's like, because you're pretty slow at getting started with the patient, right? You have an assessment, you have another meeting where you talk about some treatments. You teach a lot. That's one thing I loved about coming to you, is that you took the time to explain how the spine works and what I was dealing with and why. And is that that's new now? That's not what you were doing before.
No. Yeah. I mean, I was lucky if we were doing, I always had done an exam. So I always wanted to be clinically relevant in that sense, or clinically good. But then translating that into, okay, these are the things I found on the exam and how do we work through them? Instead of it was, well, okay, you have low back pain and I know what the problem is. I'm going to adjust you a couple times and that back pain's going to go away. But over time, if we're just treating back pain, what we know clinically is you're still going to see degeneration over a time period. If we get you out of pain and continue treating them, we may not. If that makes sense, we might actually start seeing, so technically I can't call it reversal, but at least we can see that things are holding in place.
No longer degenerating.
Right.
Yeah, there's amazing difference when you educate people on the whole process instead of just the pieces, and that's for a lot of industries.
Well, I think that's any service, right?
Yeah.
So having a plan for whatever your service is, and that's what I think a lot of businesses don't have, is what's the plan? What are we going to work through? Yeah, a system structure. What are we working through? Where am I building the value for you? And what does that process look like, and how do I lead you through that so it is a greater value to you over time?
It's interesting. I think customers can tell that when you show up, for example, when you come to my office, it's like, here's how we do business, and we would love you to plug in and go with us along the way we do business, but we're not going to mold ourselves and do it differently for one client, right?
You can't.
And I think customers crave it. I think they show up and they know a well-run business. They know someone who knows what they're doing, and they're eager to be led and served in a way that works for all these customers and for you, right?
And they'll see its efficiencies and results. And I have referral partners when I have patients come in that aren't into that process.
Right.
Fair enough. I'm not here to force anyone to do anything.
Right.
We want people to do things that are stress-free and good for them and lead them to health. So
I'm sitting here thinking, this is all well and good for someone who's got patients walking in the door, right? But what would you say to someone who doesn't, right? They just got out of school, they're trying to hang up a shingle and waiting for business to come. There's the whole other marketing side. I'd love to hear how you and your group grow and bring clients.
So do you want me to go over that now?
Sure, yeah. How do you get clients in the door? How did you grow from 0 to now? And
Sure. Well, so if you're just starting out for practice, I don't care who you are, you need a group of people who are successful to follow. I don't remember so coaching is important. I don't care where you're at. If you're a chiropractor, coaching. If you're, a real estate agent, coaching.
Yeah, I agree.
You need to be coached.
Absolutely.
And you need to be able to, what I love about the coaching firm I'm in is The chiropractor who actually runs the whole thing is a practicing chiropractor.
Yep.
He lives it every day. He has a clinic. It's not like he's just, 20 years ago I used to practice and this is what I did. So he's still very much in clinic every single day. So the marketing side is, the cool thing is your patients will be your marketing for you.
Yep.
So you ask them. When I first started, and this is what I tell a new chiropractor, he's got 1 or 2 new patients. Hey, Mrs. Jones, we had a great adjustment today. Is there anyone you know that doesn't know what you know about our clinic?
Love that.
I like that.
Yeah.
Little phrase.
Is there someone out there who comes to mind? Oh, Bill, great. Give him an action step. What would be the best way to contact Bill? What if I gave you a coupon that would give Bill, a free exam or free screening?
Mm-hmm.
Or can I call Bill? Or on Tuesday nights we have spinal workshops. Will you bring Bill to a spinal workshop? So there's always an action step that is in their comfort zone.
Yeah.
Some people are easy handing out something like a free gift certificate, but don't want you calling them.
Mm-hmm.
I get that. And so that's the biggest way I'd start. Every single person that comes in, every day, you're going to hit that kind of hard, especially if you're just starting out. Now, eventually, would you back off, maybe 1 or 2 people a session and just ask?
Mm-hmm.
I'm okay with that. So there's that. We do, initially we do screenings in the park. We do screenings at public events where we're checking spines and doing those kinds of things. And that's really how we built it. And now we're in a new burgeoning area of things where we do less of the in-person. We'll always do the internal marketing in the practice. So we have different expansion cycles where we play different games and bring up the energy with our patients, and just to have that energy high. We're not necessarily asking anything of anybody. But now we're verging into this new place of social media and getting our information out into social media, and doing ads and different things
So wait,
like that.
you built all this without that?
Didn't advertise. I still to this day have never spent a penny on advertising for
That's
Google ads or
impressive.
Facebook. Yeah.
Wow.
So, and we're moving into that. A lot of what we do is through referral and word of mouth, because that is so much more. I don't know, authentic, effective for everybody involved.
Yep.
And
Exactly.
so that's how we've built most of it, is we're constantly doing that and focusing on that.
Awesome.
Okay,
Okay.
well, we got a few minutes left. Are you ready? We're going to go through our rapid fire
Sure.
questions.
Okay.
We're going to hit you with a bunch of questions. You want to do these, Liz? Or you
Sure.
want me to do it? Okay.
All right.
All these questions have to be answered in 1 minute.
Okay, we'll do my best.
Liz.
All right. What's your favorite podcast?
So it's the Life Coach School with
Yeah,
Brooke
you turned me
Castillo.
onto that years ago.
Yep.
Yeah.
I love it too.
Awesome. Favorite business book?
So it's Capitalism, the Forgotten Ideal, but I don't know if that's a business book.
No,
Counts.
well, it kind of
It
is.
counts.
I love
Yeah,
it.
it's Ayn Rand.
Liz.
Yep.
Who do you really look up to in the business world as a role model, and why?
I think there's lots of people to look up to. I look up to a lot of the forefathers of chiropractic that were willing to get out there. You wouldn't know any of their names, but Dr. Dean DePice, some of the there's so many of them, but they were great people and worked hard to be where they're at.
Love it. And what's the best piece of advice that you could give to our listeners and watchers?
Be vulnerable
Mm-hmm.
and be willing to be coached.
That's huge. A
Yeah.
lot of people put up defensive walls, so
Sure.
it's a good one. Well, thank you so much, Burke. How can people get a hold of you if they're looking into both coaching and patient?
So the coaching firm I'm with is, I'll give their website. It's www.tlc4superteams.com.
Okay.
The letter 4 or the number 4. And then my information is, so for patient care, is welladjustedutah.com. And our phone number is 801-479-3200. We're here in South Ogden.
Perfect.
And if I could, just a plug.
Yeah.
You've seen many of my family members, people from my office.
Yeah.
We've had people who've suffered from migraines that you've helped immensely.
Yeah.
We've had, people with thyroid issues and people with, it's not just back, shoulders. And I just can't say enough about how professional you are. The human body, how to help in amazing ways that is hard to find. So anybody out there who's listening and needs a good chiropractor, couldn't recommend Dr. Burke higher.
Okay, I have to give a really quick plug too. So I've had headaches for years and finally went and started seeing you and haven't really had headaches since.
Oh, good.
I had problems in my shoulder, which I didn't even know you could help with until you mentioned that one day. And for years I had like this shooting pain if I lifted in a certain way, and that's gone. And then my son, who had back problems from wrestling, he had just gotten jolted bad one time and it had bothered him for over a year, and saw Dr. Burke for a few months. I think it was 6 months or something like that. And he's been great ever since. And I just think, what if we had left him kind of janky from adolescence and just grown right into adulthood? That could have been issues forever. Yeah, so you have been amazing. Every single person I've referred to. So thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thanks for coming. Thanks for sharing your insight with us, and wish you the best.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thanks, Burke.
Yep.
You've been listening to the Business Greater Than You podcast with Nilsen Bars and Liz Sears. Our mission is to help lenders and agents like you.
If you're either already a full-time realtor or looking to become one, and you desire to be highly successful, if you are both a learner and a doer, a hard worker and a total team player, we would love to chat with you about joining our team. Visit us at businessgreaterthanyou.com.
If you're a loan officer or would like to be one, we have a path to help you learn the business and develop the skills needed to lead a high-performance origination team for better income and lifestyle.
And lastly, if you would like to work with either of us, we would love your business.
Do you have a question for a future show? Would you like to be considered as a guest on our show? If so, please call or text our listener line at 801-871-9130.